Hello, my random viewers, and welcome to Randomly Offensive. Today, we are going to be continuing the story of King the Second. And if you have not seen the previous two videos of this series, they will be pinned at the end of the video. Absolutely go check them out. Now, when we last left off with King, he had just learned that a man named Marduk had murdered Armored King. The second father figure that he has lost was murdered by this professional wrestler named Marduk in a bar brawl. Now, King has bribed the prison to release Marduk and took the precautions and made sure that he was accepted in the 4th Iron Fist tournament along with himself so that he can dish out punishment and vengeance with his own two hands. With that being said, let's hop in to this story. Now, before the King of the Iron Fist tournament starts, King decides to become much stronger using the help of his friends, which is a lesson he learned when he fought the ogre. So he goes and gets back Makujin and Kuma and has them help him train while he helps them with other things. And he makes new friends with Julia and Lee, and the same goes for them. He helps them in certain ways, but he also gains certain types of training by helping them. And these people become somewhat of a family dynamic as they live on the same land and help each other out throughout these next 2 weeks to prepare for the 4th King of the Iron Fist tournament. King helps out Julia by rototilling the land and pulling weeds, farming, planting, but he has to do it barehanded and only use what God gave him, which is one of the oldest styles of martial arts training there is. And so they're helping each other out in that way. King is also helping Makujin learn more fighting styles, which is causing King to also be able to learn how to adapt to other fighting styles, while he also helps Kuma gather food so that Kuma can hibernate. And of course, he's only being able to use what God gave him, having to really hone into his animal instincts when it comes to hunting deer and gathering berries and so on and so forth. Now, Lee isn't really much of a help when it comes to physical training, since he's more of a businessman and a science man. However, him being a science man, he is able to test out certain high-tech training equipment on these people, including King, and King gets to be trained with the highest technology there is, the highest type of equipment that can keep track of his heart rate and his blood pressure and force him to his very limits, while Lee gets to learn what equipment works and what equipment will not work. So after the 2 weeks, after all this training, and after all the bonding that these people have done, it is finally time for the 4th King of the Iron Fist tournament, and so King heads off, saying goodbye to his new friends. But on the side, Marduk has not been slouching. He too has been training for this event because he knows what's up. Marduk's training is completely different from King's. It is not him bonding or making new friends. It is him going from street fight to street fight, from bar to bar, from underground layers to underground layers, bashing in the skulls of his victims because he got the roster. He knows that King is on there, and he has a feeling that King is the one that paid to get him out of prison. And he knows that King is the one that wants him down, and that King wants revenge for what he did to Armored King. So Marduk is fighting incredible foes, unknown foes, and he is just annihilating these people, taking on the strongest fighters that he can find outside of the Iron Fist tournament to become as strong as he possibly can by time the 4th King of the Iron Fist tournament begins. And so he does this for 2 weeks, going from fight to fight to fight, up to 5 fights a day. And now the 4th King of the Iron Fist tournament begins, and King and Marduk show up, and they see the roster. They see Brian, they see Eddie, Hwang, Julia, Kazuha, King, Law, Lee, Lei, Nina, Paul, Exalyu, Yoshimitsu, Christy, Marduk, and Steve Fox. And as they analyze and look at all of the opponents, the only ones they care about are themselves. Now, Marduk is up for the first match, and he is going up against Lee. Now, like we discussed earlier, Lee is not on the same level as the rest of these fighters. He's a businessman, he's a scientist, but he's taking this chance to finally be able to beat his father in a fight. Heihachi Mishima is Lee's target, and Lee wants to take over the Mishima organization for reasons we'll delve into when we get to Lee's storyline. Now, when this fight starts, this just boils more anger and rage in King, because Lee does not stand a chance, and Marduk plays really freaking dirty. As soon as Lee starts getting the upper hand by throwing massive amounts of kicks, just the fastest barrage of kicks you can imagine, and Marduk starts getting overwhelmed, he grabs the leg of Lee and starts just elbowing the kneecap of Lee until it starts to fracture. He then sweep kicks Lee onto the ground while still holding the leg and just drop elbows Lee's kneecap, shattering it. However, Lee gets back up because he's gone through huge character arc developments since Tekken 2. And he manages to dodge these massive attacks and punches thrown by Marduk because Lee is incredibly nimble and Marduk is just a huge freaking dude. And so with every kneecap thrown, with every punch thrown, you know that Lee is capable of dodging. However, Lee's attacks don't do any damage to Marduk. Marduk is just a pure muscular tank of a man. And so Marduk finally just has enough of it and grabs Lee by the neck, and this brings just tremendous flashbacks to King as he watches, and King is reimagining the necks of his two father figures being snapped, and he starts to panic. However, Lee manages to escape by breaking the thumb of Marduk and dropping back to the ground. However, Marduk does not hesitate with this broken thumb. He tackles Lee to the ground and just starts delivering punches and elbows to Lee's face until there's hardly anything to recognize on the facial features of Lee. And with that, Marduk takes the round. Now, the first match that King is up in, he goes up against Yoshimitsu. Now, Yoshimitsu is not a force to be reckoned with. However, he is not a one-on-one kind of fighter, nor is he tournament worthy when it comes to his style of fighting. So, though it may seem like he's going to be a chump, I will be able to redeem him in the future when I talk about Yoshimitsu's storyline. However, in this round, when Yoshimitsu swings the sword towards King manages to clap the blade in between his hands and then just snaps the blade and delivers a spear elbow directly to Yoshimitsu, knocking him out cold. Now again, if it sounds like I am belittling the worth of Yoshimitsu, he will be redeemed in the future. But now we are going to continue our focus on the battle between Marduk and King, because that is the fight that is up next. Now, as King and Marduk enter the ring for round 2, there is incredible hype because, unlike the other tournaments, there is a ring in the middle of a huge audience. They're in a stadium, and the audience knows what's up. They know that Marduk is the murderer of Armored King. They know what King the Second has been through, and so there is hype for this match. And when the round is begun, these two just start walking around each other, analyzing each other, and after a brief, short amount of time, they finally engage in combat. So King dives in and throws as many punches and elbows, knees and kicks as he can towards Marduk. However, Marduk is blocking them and absorbing them with his pure amounts of muscle. And as Marduk is blocking and just absorbing these attacks, he is also slowly walking forward, pushing King back as King is being the offensive. King's on the offensive, but is still being pushed back to the corner of the ring. And so King starts attacking stronger and faster because every strike he throws, he is remembering the mentor of Armored King, and he's remembering all the memories and all the training that he had. And those memories turn into pain, and that pain then turns into anger, and that anger becomes strength, and every blow becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. But before you know it, King is in the corner of the ring, and Marduk uses both hands and grabs the neck of King and picks him up, squeezing it. King then starts to panic, and he feels his neck being bent backwards. Is this how every king is destined to go out? Is every king meant to die because of a snapped neck against an opponent that they cannot beat? No. If that is fate, then King the Second is not going to allow it to be his fate. He starts punching the face of Marduk while kicking Marduk in the groin, trying to get out of this grasp of this fierce, pure, strength-inhibited beast that he is going up against. He is not going to fail his revenge. He will not fail Armored King. And so he manages to just take his thumb and shove it in the eye of Marduk, and manages to push Marduk away, forcing the grasp of that neck hold to finally release. And as soon as King hits the ground, he charges with massive force. King connects a punch to Marduk, while Marduk connects a punch to King, and King returns, connecting another strike, while Marduk returns a connecting strike. Following that, this continues over and over and over. King uppercuts Marduk in the ribcage, causing Marduk to spit out blood, and Marduk grabs a hold of King's hand and snaps whatever fingers Marduk can get a hold of. King does scream in pain, but he still recoils and knocks Marduk in the middle of the face, right between the eyes with an elbow, and then delivers a sweeping kick to Marduk. Marduk hits the ground and gets back up, but as he's getting up, King delivers a sweeping kick right to the ribs of Marduk, knocking him down again. Marduk goes to get back up, and King punches downwards, striking the skull of Marduk, slamming him down again. Marduk tries to get up one more time, but King jumps on top of him and gets him in a neck hold, pulling his neck back, delivering open palm strikes to the back of Marduk's skull as he squeezes his biceps around Marduk's neck, trying to get this guy out. There is no way he can kill Marduk live in front of the audience. He is an icon. Many, many orphans are watching King. He is a hero to children, so he knows what he's about to do must be done in private. He must hospitalize Marduk and then finish him off in private. So he releases the neck hold and picks Marduk up, throwing him into the corner of the ring. And as he charges in, Marduk tries to defend himself, but is incapable. King is throwing too fast and too strong of punches, just drilling into the torso of Marduk. Marduk starts to become dizzy. He starts to become weak in the legs, but every time he starts to fall, King picks him back up, throws him back into the corner of the ring, and continues the onslaught that Marduk is just not handling. And King cannot tire. King cannot get out of this rage, this lust for vengeance. He will not stop striking Marduk. And over and over and over, he stops Marduk from collapsing and throws him back into the ring and just keeps delivering these blows that are shaking the very ring they stand in. However, enough is enough. And finally, King stops the onslaught and lets Marduk fall to the ground, collapsing in the ring. The audience is silent as King walks away the victor. Marduk is carried away by an ambulance, having to wear an oxygen mask just to breathe, as an EMT rides on top of him, trying to get him to stay alive long enough to get to the hospital. King does not show up for the third round. That would have been against Kazuha. He goes missing. Now, later, hours and hours later, he is seen walking into the hospital with a bouquet of flowers. He walks into Marduk's room. He is hospitalized. He is unconscious. He had received the beating of a lifetime. And King sets the roses down onto Marduk's chest, grabs hold of Marduk's neck, raises his hand to deliver the final blow. And before he brings his fist down, he sees a picture next to Marduk. And this picture is of Marduk with his wife and his son. King looks at it and realizes what he's about to do. He's about to take away someone's father. He's about to take away someone's husband. And he is about to cause the very pain that Marduk has caused him. And that is when King decides that this trend must stop. No one deserves to lose anybody, regardless of what the person may have done. And with that, King leaves the hospital and goes home to his orphanage and continues to take care of the orphans for the following years to come. And now we get to move on to the 5th Tekken and the 5th Iron Fist tournament. Throughout the years of Tekken 4 and Tekken 5, in between that time, King continues his relationship with Julia, Lee, Makujin, and Kuma, while also running the orphanage and becoming one of the most incredible icons in professional wrestling that all young men could look up to, because ever since the events with Marduk, King has made a vow to always take the high road and to always do what's right. Now, throughout the years between Tekken 4 and Tekken 5, life really does seem perfect, and it is. King has a very good life as a professional luchador, professional wrestler. And so, with that said, meanwhile, Marduk has been training very hard so that he could get back at King. And the 5th Iron Fist tournament has been announced, and Marduk looks at the roster as he's wanting to join, but there is no King. King has decided not to join this tournament. So, Marduk, enraged that he will never have that rematch, goes on the television during a professional wrestling match, donning the black Armored King Jaguar mask. As King sees this on the television, anger boils within him. Marduk then uses the time he has to just insult and slander Armor King, and throwing shade at a dead man that cannot defend himself. This enrages King, and Marduk, live on the television, tells King exactly where to go for a rematch, and telling him that he would never stand a chance in a real fight between them. And so King dons his Jaguar mask once again and walks out of the orphanage, leaving Lee in charge. And as he's walking, he is confronted by Julia. Julia begins to beg him not to do this, that he has already gotten his vengeance, and not to let Marduk's words get to him. King, however, tells her to step aside, and he does not want to hurt a friend, but he must put an end to this. Julia refuses, and King has no choice but to fight a close friend. King grabs Julia and throws her to the side. However, Julia manages to swing around him, getting on top of his shoulders, trying to squeeze the neck of King. King manages to pick her up and throw her off of him, and then the fight continues and begins. He starts throwing punches at Julia, but Julia managing to gracefully dodge and move around every single one of them, knowing she cannot get hit by King. She manages to throw powerful kicks that knock King back, but King will not be deterred from what he has to do. And so, King and Julia engage in close to toe-to-toe combat, as every punch he throws does not land. She manages to just avoid every single strike. He then goes to grappling. However, she is able to use incredible techniques to twist his wrist in order to relieve the pressure from any grapples that he may attempt to get a hold of her. She then starts dancing around King, kicking him and punching him and elbowing him, causing damage. She's landing karate chops to the back of his neck, causing him to go down continuously. So King decides to use the same style of techniques, dancing around Julia as she dances around him. They are both now dodging and avoiding, bobbing and weaving each other's attacks. And King does not want to hurt his close friend. He does not want to hurt Julia. Julia, on the other end, does not want to hurt King. And King knows this. So he throws dirt in the air and creating a blind spot from Julia. He just manages to travel alongside the dirt cloud and brings his arms around Julia, getting her in a neck hold, ever so gently squeezing. She's throwing massive punches behind her shoulder and over her shoulder into the face of King, trying to get him to let go, but he will not. And so Julia decides to pick her legs up and swings her legs forward, and when her legs touch the ground, she bends her back forward and manages to flip King over her shoulders, slamming him into the ground. With that, King quickly manages to pick himself up with one hand, swinging himself in a circle, delivering a massive airborne roundhouse directly to Julia, sending her flying across the ground. As she slowly starts to pick her up, he looks at her and apologizes as he delivers an elbow directly to the forehead of Julia, knocking her out cold. He looks at her, sorry for what he had to do, and goes to face Marduk. King finally makes it to the destination given to him by Marduk, with Marduk waiting there for him in his fighting attire, accompanied by his fans and biker gang to watch Marduk finally take on and defeat his rival. King looks at Marduk in anger. Marduk then points to King. "I have changed my ways," he says, continuing his pointing finger. "I will defeat you fair and square. No tricks. None of that. I am here today to prove that I am the better fighter." These words settle in King, as King realizes that this is not a vengeance fight, nor is it a battle to the death. This is a fight simply to see who is the better fighter. And with that, the fight begins. King and Marduk clash as they both attempt a tackle, as they're pushing against each other, trying to force the other one down. And so now they start just swinging each other around, and they will ungrapple with one hand in order to punch the other opponent. King lets go with one hand and starts delivering elbows and punches to the gut of Marduk, while Marduk will let go of one of his grapples and start delivering equal amounts of blows to the guts of King. As they're delivering blows to the torso, they finally force each other to let go. So Marduk then delivers a massive chamber kick to King that sends King flying against a wooden rod, and the wooden rod snaps. King catches the rod before it falls on him and throws it like a spear directly towards Marduk. Marduk catches it with one hand, slamming it to the ground, and looks at him. "You don't seem to get it. This is a professional match. No dirty tricks," as he points to King. King nods in understanding of what this is and continues the battle. He starts throwing jabs and punches, kicks and thrusting elbows as Marduk receives some with damage and blocks and dodges others, while Marduk also throws massive punches, landing some and missing others. King and Marduk are not dodging and weaving. They're not bobbing and weaving. They're not rope-a-doping. They are absorbing these punches in hopes that they can return a bigger one, and this becomes a massive game of hit for hit, with every hit connecting, causing shockwaves throughout the area. Marduk then places both hands on the shoulders of King and starts delivering massive headbutts directly into King's face. As King slowly starts getting forced to his knees, he grabs the testicles of Marduk and twists them, forcing Marduk to let go. King then stands up and delivers a massive rounding elbow to the jawline of Marduk, rocking Marduk back. King then jumps in the air and extends both his legs, landing a double airborne kick into the chest of Marduk. Marduk goes falling down. King then charges Marduk again. As Marduk gets up, King dives in the air, sending a flying spear knee directly to the gut of Marduk, causing Marduk to puke up blood. As Marduk is about to fall to the ground, King knees him in the face, causing Marduk to actually stand back up by pure force. And then King starts dancing around Marduk, throwing blows. Marduk is hurt at this point, and every time Marduk tries to throw a punch, they are slow and weak. King is able to avoid it easily and counters with an over-shoulder rounding punch that is going downwards, causing Marduk to have his back bent every time he is punched in the face. Marduk then proceeds to attempt a bear hug on King and is successful and picks King up off the ground, squeezing him as hard as he can in hopes to force King into submission. However, King manages to wiggle one of his arms out and delivers a straight down elbow into the skull of Marduk, forcing Marduk to let go. King then starts throwing massive punches straight into the air pipe of Marduk. And Marduk ends up getting to a point where he just can't breathe. And as he starts trying to get away and stepping backwards, King just keeps on the onslaught and keeps going forward, throwing these massive punches. And so Marduk reaches down and grabs the leg of King, and then grabs the other leg of King and puts them in between his armpits and just starts twirling King around and around and around and around and around, and then jumps into the air and turns himself sideways so that King is being spun towards the ground, and then he just lets go, sending King flying headfirst into concrete with enough force that it actually creates a small crater. However, King manages to pull his head out of the concrete as Marduk is falling to the ground and just delivers a massive uppercut connecting to Marduk's jaw before Marduk actually lands to the ground. And this punch has so much force, it sends Marduk flipping backwards in the air 3, 4, maybe even 5 times, and then he hits the ground and Marduk is out. As he taps out on the ground 3 times, Marduk has submitted. King, realizing that Marduk has become a completely different person than in the past and has truly worked on himself in between Tekken 4 and 5, sends down a hand to help Marduk up. And Marduk gets up, grabbing the hand of King, and as they grasp each other's hands, they look each other into the eyes with newfound respect. And these two create a bond, as Marduk explains that he regrets ever killing somebody, and that he was drunk and did not know what he was doing, and he took the prison time because he knew he earned it. He knew he deserved it. And so, with this new respect, these two become incredible partners in the professional wrestling world, and they join tag team matches, and they are an unstoppable force. No opponent can handle the pure force and teamwork of Marduk and King. And throughout the years between Tekken 5 and Tekken 6, these two become brothers. Now, in the beginning of Tekken 6, Marduk is assaulted and sent to the hospital. When King finds this out, he watches the news footage and sees Armored King being the one to assault Marduk. At least it's someone pretending to be Armored King. And so King goes to the gravestone and starts to dig up the grave of Armored King to make sure it's not actually him. Marduk, meanwhile, wakes up in the hospital, realizing that Armored King was the one who assaulted him. He too goes to the gravestone and sees King. And as they dig up the gravesite, Marduk is saying, I know I killed him. I know that I killed Armored King. And King agrees. And as they finally dig up the coffin, they open it up, and sure enough, the corpse of Armored King is in the coffin. And then they hear footsteps, and as they turn around, there stands Armored King, or someone in the Armored King attire. Marduk and King ask him who he is and why he dons the Armored King attire. However, this person does not respond with words, but instead lunges at them with the intent to harm Marduk and King. And that is where I'm going to have to leave this story off because I'm running out of time. So, I will be working on the conclusion to King's story, and if you're interested, absolutely keep your eye out for it. Like always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate all of you guys. And do consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and maybe even sharing. It helps me out a lot. I'm a small channel. So yeah, do not get hit by a meteor. Take care of yourselves, and bye.